Dartmouth South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I can't resist just saying a few words, having spent a great deal of the last 4 years advocating for affordable childcare. I have now left that file in the able hands of my colleague, the member for Halifax Needham. But I do want to say at this moment, as we are still in the throes of COVID-19, as we think about things like an economic recovery, and we'll debate this, I think, on the next bill around gender equity and gender-based analyses, but this is something whose time has long since come. And, you know, in Dartmouth South, just in the last year, we've lost 2 childcare centres. So in my immediate neighbourhood, which will seem very small geographically to those of you probably in more spread out ridings, but we've lost 2 neighbourhood daycares. So there is no regulated daycare in downtown Dartmouth right now. And that is because of the lack of stable funding. I mean, it's because obviously of a lot of things. It has to do with housing, it has to do with the real estate market, it has to do with all kinds of, it has to do with COVID. But it has to do with the lack of stable funding, and that's something we've advocated for a long time. And I think it's also worth noting that, you know, Quebec did this a long time ago. So the notion that the federal government tried it in 2006 and then we never could have done it again until the federal government saved us now, I think is a little bit simplistic. We have been pushing for a provincial solution, which quite frankly I think should have come a long time ago. We know that there was action taken on this file and we appreciate that action, but the reality was, and until we see more movement still is, it has been incredibly difficult for childcare centres to operate, and it has been incredibly difficult for the folks who staff those centres to have a decent life. Most of them make far below a living wage. You know, there is a wage floor that has helped somewhat, but there's so much work to be done there. And, you know, we saw in the government platform during the election this idea of a pension for doctors. We've been asking for a pension for early childhood educators for years. And while we know that there's issues with physician recruitment, quite frankly, if anyone needs, one of the top things I hear from early childhood educators when I speak to them is, if I stay in this job, I'm going to retire in poverty. Poverty. Because that's how low the wages are. And these, for me, I mean, we're all sharing our personal experiences a little bit. I had 3 kids in 18 months. And so I know people always try to do math when I say that, but true story, all mine. And I paid for those 3 kids to be in daycare, and it was punishing. It was more than my mortgage by a long shot. And you know, this question, and we've had this conversation on the floor of this House. You know, but can you afford to work? Does it make sense for you to work? That question became so offensive to me because the answer, quite frankly, was no. No, but I did it anyway because it was important to me. But you know, as my colleague for Clayton Park West has pointed out, not all women have that agency. Not all women can make that decision. And so that decision is made easier when, as government, we create the frameworks that allow those choices to be made by women, by families. And so I think it is incredibly important that we continue on this path, but I don't want to lose the thread as we talk about this of how we move forward out of COVID. And so not only is this an important program and priority generally, but it is imperative right now. We've seen women's labor force participation drop. It has not recovered at the same pace as men's. And this is a massive issue. I mean, I was listening to the radio, I think this morning or yesterday, and the former CEO of Pepsi was on. And they said to her, like, how did you make it this far? Like, how can we make sure that more women break this corporate glass ceiling? And one of the first things she said was childcare, like, which you know, if you haven't been thinking about these issues, might seem like it comes out of left field a little bit, but it doesn't. It really doesn't. And so I think it's really, I would urge this government to do everything they can, not only to honor this agreement, but to acknowledge the provincial responsibility, frankly, and agency that we have in going even further and in making sure that we move towards not only ensuring that everyone has quality, safe, accessible, affordable childcare, but that the workers in those childcare centres are paid a living wage, that they don't retire in poverty, and that is part of a piece of understanding that really the economy of the future, I think, and I'm not the only one who thinks it, is the caring economy, which is part of the green economy. And so those are the CCAs and the ECEs and the folks who are taking care of people, because that is a really difficult thing to automate. It really is. It's the, I think, and you know, I am forever quoting the economist Armin Yalnazian in this chamber, but it is these are the new middle class jobs. This is really the backbone of our economy going forward, and so I hope that the government takes all of that into account, and I hope that they don't, you know, I'm glad to see that we're moving past some partisan divisions in terms of this government not aligning themselves with their federal, I don't know what they would call them, third cousins. I mean, I don't know what they are, but what, pardon? Whatever it is, those people with a similar name in the federal parliament, you know, have taken a very strong position against this approach. I'm glad that this government has not followed suit, and I hope that it will remain that way. But I hope that these other issues that I've pointed to are also taken into account, because not only is this good and laudable and important, but it is absolutely vital if we want to move forward as a province, if we want to thrive, and if we want to come out the other side of this pandemic with any semblance of equity and, you know, sort of gender equity in particular in the workforce. Thank you very much.